pleasure to be between lunch, right? Always nice to be the one who's keeping you away from lunch. But to make sure that I know who is all here, we're going to do a old-fashioned poll, right? So might be difficult for the millennials. Might be difficult for the millennials. We're going to do an old-fashioned poll, right? Without technology. You don't need your phone. I'd like all of you to stand up, please. That's easy, right? You all stand up. Because I know we have one thing in common, right? We have one thing in common. We have all hotel industry in common. Somehow, we are all having something to do with the hotel industry. Millennials, how does it feel to not to press a button on your phone and just to stand up, right? How great is that? So everybody of you that has never worked in a hotel should sit down. Everybody who has never worked in a hotel should sit down, because we all have something in common. We all stayed in a hotel. We all have something to do with hotels. So these are the people in the room that have worked in a hotel. Okay. Who is still working in a hotel? Everybody else sitting, please. All right, okay. Welcome, fellow hoteliers. Thank you very much. You may now sit down. It's just for me to know how many hoteliers are in this room, because we're going to connect in a different way. I'm going to connect you to the world of the hotel business. I think it's very important that we get a better understanding, because our industry will do so much better if we have a better understanding between the travel buyers and the hotels, right? And I'm qualified to speak about the industry because I've been 30 years on the other side in different shapes and forms, not as a cat, but as a hotelier, so in different capacities. And I'd like to share some of the things that I've come across over the years, but also things that are very relevant today in the business where we are. Okay? So you only have to bear with me for 30 minutes. There's a big clock running in front of me to remind me when I should finish before the food gets cold. All right? So, but before we are going to go in there, I'm going to tell you what we are not going to talk about. Things that are relevant, that I would love to go in detail with you, but I don't have time to speak about them. One of the things that we are not going to talk about is Airbnb. We're not going to talk about it. It has been hugely underestimated by the hotel industry. Meanwhile, there's more than 3 million units out there on sale as accommodation. 18% of the business travelers have stayed for business in Airbnb accommodation. Hugely underestimated by the hotel groups, by the hotel businesses, but very relevant. But we're not going to talk about it. Okay? What we're also not going to talk about is OYO. Anybody of you heard of OYO? Huh? OYO is a disruptive new franchise concept, right? It was created in 2015 or so in India, not so long ago. You know how many hotels, according to STR, OYO will have by the end of this year? 15,000. 15,000 hotels that have been developed, not as hotels, but under a new franchise flag, created by this disruptive new franchise company from India. But we are not going to talk about it. But it's another disruptor that is hugely underestimated in our industry today. What we're also not going to talk about is how lifestyle is becoming the new cookie cutter. Remember, we said, okay, Holiday Inns, Novotels, all these hotels that always look the same, right? We were creating lifestyle hotels, because when you're in a lifestyle hotel, you would have always a different experience. And this different experience would make things more personal, and it will make it unique. Guess what? The irony is that all these hotels, all these new brands, they all look the same. They all have the same type of design, so it's basically cookie cutter reinvented, right? They all look nice, right? But it's all more of the same again. But we're not going to talk about that. What we are going to talk about is the following. We're going to talk a little bit about the current hotel landscape. We are going to talk about revenue, what revenue means for hotels and how relevant that is for you. And then we are going to look at some trends and then trying to wrap everything together, why all of this is relevant to you. So the hotel landscape to start with. So this is the hotel landscape, right? So there's tons of brands everywhere. Every day a new brand is being created. Okay? And it used to be very simple. 30 years ago, if we would travel to a remote place, or if we would travel to a place that was not so close to us, when we wanted to make a hotel reservation, we would either call them or send a fax, if the fax machine was already there, and try to make a reservation, or we would go to a travel agent. We would go to a travel agent who would make the reservation in a faraway place, in South America, or in Asia, or somewhere in Africa. And when we would be going there, we would be staying in a Hilton, or in a Marriott, or in an Intercontinental hotel, because we were sure about what we would get, right? But that has changed. Distribution has become a commodity, right? We all have the possibility to reserve a hotel at the palm of our hand, and it doesn't have to be a branded hotel anymore, because I can check on TripAdvisor or in my peer group on Facebook whether these hotels are nice or not. It is so much easier today to be connected, to be able to stay and book in hotels. It has become a true commodity. In the meantime, if you look at the hotel groups, a lot of things have happened as well. All these hotel groups, they have grown bigger and bigger. There is the complete consolidation that is taking place, where big groups are buying other big groups, okay? And they're all moving inside. So we're having now very big hotel groups that are controlling more and more of the hotel supply. If you look over here, if you look over here, how many hotel groups are having more than 5,000 hotels? It is really huge, right? Companies like Marriott having almost 7,000 hotels. You see Oyo popping up over there with 17,000, right? Not so many rooms, because there's lots of very, very small hotels, but it's usually relevant to understand how much bigger these hotel groups are getting. And then if we look at the reality, even though that still the global share of hotels is the majority consisting of independent hotels, the irony is that 75% of the travel programs, as was mentioned before, is actually controlled by the chains, right? And this is making it very interesting, and this is where it's becoming relevant. So if you look at the challenges that come with that, if you know that it's more or less 600,000 hotels, right, but basically 125, 130,000 of those, they are controlled by the chains, right? But then 75, which is only 25%, but then the reverse of that is that 75% that is basically controlling the travel programs. And as a result of which, you come into a situation where in certain markets, the chains are so powerful, right, that they are almost in control of what is happening, right? If you take a market like Manchester today, in Manchester, Marriott has got about 23% market share. Just one brand, right? Small French company where I used to work for called Accor in Paris, they have 250 hotels. Can you imagine? 250 hotels. And why is this relevant? This is relevant because if there is not the right balance, right, these hotels are very sophisticated. They know very well what they are doing. But if they are ending up in a situation where they're more of in a seller's market, their revenue management practices can be of great influence of how well your travel program is still in the way you thought you had bought it. Okay? So I'm going to talk a little bit further about that. But before going in there, it's important to understand how hotels measure success. So what makes a hotel successful? That depends again. That depends on who is the hotel. Is it the owner? Is it the manager? Or the brand? In most cases, these are three different parties. Yes, Marriott and Hilton and Accor, they all started with their very first hotel and hotels that they used to own. Today, right, they don't own the hotels anymore, right? Let's take one very simple example, if it works. This doesn't count for my time, right? Yes. Okay, back to Marriott. Of all of their 1.3 million hotel rooms, they just own 1% themselves. All the rest is owned by other people, right? So most of the time they are just in franchise agreement, and in some other cases it's a management agreement, but they do not own the brick and mortar of the hotel. The brick and mortar of the hotel is owned by big investment firms, real estate investment trusts, as they are often called, or sometimes very fast-growing owner-operated family companies that have grown very, very fast, right? This hotel is not owned by the Marriott Group, right? It's owned by the investors who are also involved in the airport, and it happens to be a state-related owner, right? So it is very important to understand that with whom the brand that is on the roof is not the owner of the brick and mortar that you see. Now these brands, right, they come at a cost. And again, it's important to understand how this works. The costs are a composition of many different fees that hotels, hotel owners, have to pay to those who are providing the brand, the franchisors, right? And this adds up, right? I can share with you the latest statistics from HVS, which is a company that is analyzing this kind of information. This is what, on average, a fee to a brand is costing. So let's say 12 to 13%. So that means for every 100 euro, right, 12 euro is basically cost already for the hotel owner to pay to the brand, okay? So this is important to understand. So back to our question, how do hotels measure success? There's one very important indicator. Hoteliers in the room, what is one of the most important indicators in our business? Here we go, RevPAR. RevPAR is a very important performance indicator because it combines revenue, it says revenue per available room. It's actually a very interesting balance between occupancy and average rate. And this indicator is used in many different ways. It's used to measure as a hotel against yourselves, how you are performing against the past and last year. But also how you are performing against your competitors. You can compare your data. This is shared amongst hotels, goes into a black box, and you have the opportunity to share this and check how you are performing against your competition. And it's also used for hotel developers to understand what is the certain value of a certain segment in a market. We know, for example, that the RevPAR for London is £123, right? Here in Warsaw, it's at the moment 58, 60 euros, right? So we also use this from a market perspective, okay? So this RevPAR element is leading us to the next part, which is revenue management. And also revenue management has become very, very relevant for the hotel industry. In the 80s, big hotel groups, they learned from the airlines, who are very sophisticated in revenue management, as we know. And hotel groups started implementing revenue management as a general practice. And it really became a science. And it's very simple. It's relevant for almost every business. What is it? Right? It's very simple. It's the right product to the right customer at the right time at the right price. But the question is, how are you making sure that this is happening? So there's people in the hotel, they are making sure that the right rates are being sold at the right time. And again, going back to the comparison that I made just before, it is important to understand that the rates that travel buyers negotiate are actually available and are not being closed out as a result of a certain revenue management strategy. the interesting thing is that as revenues have started developing, we also know that actually the costs associated to it have developed because the type of distribution has changed significantly, right? We know that sort of in 25 years ago, when Expedia started and later Booking.com, all of a sudden a different distribution started at a different cost. But not only that, the amount of distributed business became much more. So all of a sudden the factor cost became much more relevant and a much more relevant indicator as just the revenue. Okay? So that leads to the question, so what about this cost of acquisition? How much does it cost, the revenue that we generate when we are selling the hotel? This is, again, adding up to 20%. So the cost of acquisition of this 100 euro room is adding up to 20% or even more. And I'm going to give you a live example. And everything I show is based on reality. This is coming out of real hotel practice analysis. So let's take a hotel. Let's say this is a 100 euro revenue, room night, that is arriving in the hotel. And then let's look, what does this hotel have in terms of cost to deal with, as part of this revenue? It is commissions, channel cost, PMS and CRS, so property management system, all the technology to make it happen in the hotel, that connectivity, the cost of that, the cost of the distribution channels, the commissions, the TMC cost, the brand cost, all of that combined is adding up to 20 to 30%. This is huge, and it's important that you as travel buyers realize that, right? If I just take the distribution part, right? It is important to understand that all these different levels of distribution, they have a different cost, right? The highest cost of distribution, for example, is a booking, an old-fashioned booking via a wholesaler, right? Then we have a booking, for example, via a tour operator, it's costing almost 25%, right? A booking via the CRS, GDS, there's cost associated to that, it's about 24%, all right? The online travel agency cost, 15%. Right? HRS always likes to say, because one of the key objectives of HRS is to make sure that we can do business as direct as possible, because it will make it cheaper for the hotels to be connected to us, so we can give that advantage also back to you to create for you better value. But it's important to understand how this works, but mostly also the impact of this, because it shows, in the end, that the hotels have to shift from revenue management to profitability management. And this is a very interesting shift that is happening at the moment. Another very interesting analysis. This is from a company called Jujo Analytics. It's a company that is analyzing data, again, back to data, for about 120 hotels in Europe. Okay? And what they are doing, they are basically putting everything you have seen in the 20 and 30% that I showed on the previous slide, they are putting that in a box, right? And they are measuring that against the segment of the business, what is booked. And then you see something very interesting. You actually see that not necessarily the highest rate is having the highest profitability. Actually, what you see over here is that the corporate rate is not the highest, right? But it's the second highest in terms of profitability, right? And that is important and relevant to know, because hotels are asking themselves these questions all the time. Okay, what business is most relevant for me? I cannot just measure the revenue anymore. I have to measure everything that is related to that, and it's all about the profitability related to the business that I get. So the good news is, for all of us over here, is that corporate is the second most profitable segment after the segment of direct business to the hotel. So the business that is arriving directly in the hotel. Okay? And that's the good news, because that makes that business traveler that we all like so much truly valuable. Right? Because there's lots of reasons why this business traveler is so valuable. I always like to say that basically the business traveler is valuable because he is not coming back into the hotel with a little shopping bag, with a bottle of wine or a couple of beers and some crackers, and doing the picnic in his room, right? The business traveler will go to the restaurant or order room service, okay? So it is a very valuable customer. It's also a customer that is coming back, right? The typical description of a typical online travel agency leisure booker is somebody that is traveling once a year, right? Who is maybe going once to that destination and who wants to have the best possible hotel for the lowest possible price. And once they have been with you, you'll probably not see him back for a long time. The business traveler is. So there's all kinds of reasons why the business traveler is the traveler that we love, right? I think that we all have that in common, okay? So if you understand the challenges where the hotels are dealing with today, it is more difficult for them to reach the customer. Even though it's very easy for the customer to reach the hotel, it's more and more difficult to reach the customer, especially the corporate customer, right? Because you get more organized. The cost of sales is something that is very relevant. There's still quite a high level of OTA dependency. And then it is all again back to data. The masses of data that hotels have to deal with that become relevant for hotels is huge, right? And the hotels are now working very hard to improve their systems to be able to deal with this. And also artificial intelligence and business intelligence and everything related to this is becoming very relevant. I was the last 2 days, I was at the HETNA conference, which is the Hospitality Electronic Distribution Conference in Madrid. And this was one of the key subjects. How are we as hotels are going to be able to deal with the masses of data that we have to deal with to be able to take the right decisions? Okay, so much for a little bit of education and understanding for you on the hotel side. Now, let's go a little bit, look for a second in some trends and relevance. First, we have summarized quickly for you some hotel challenges, then some product shifts, and then in the end, some new entries and practices. As I mentioned already, there's a chain consolidation on the hotel side. There is the asset-light strategy. That means hotel groups do not own hotels anymore, and if they own it, they sell it, and they do franchise or management agreements. As a result of that, there is a new breed of managers coming in on the owner side. They are called the asset managers, and the asset managers are keeping the hotel groups awake, right? They make sure that they get the value for the business. Then there is the loyalty program that is becoming more and more important because that is bridging basically the brand with the traveler. It is basically that loyalty program that will create the closest possible connection between the hotel brand and the traveler. It's becoming very, very relevant. So you see a lot of things happening there. Marriott just launching a new one, 100% integrated, the Starwood and the Marriott program. Accor just launching a new program, so very relevant. Still, the business is going really well. Since in the last 10 years, almost everywhere in the world, occupancies have gone up, and especially during the weekdays, so there's a lot of pressure on the weekdays. Then there is a general push of dynamic corporate rates, right? So hotels like the dynamic corporate rates because then they can do like an airline, you know, have the seat more expensive one day or at a certain moment of time than during another moment of time. And hotels would like to do the same with that hotel room, but in particular also for the corporate rates, which is making it very difficult for you if you want to do your travel budget, because it's much easier to keep an overview of the money that you will spend if you have a fixed rate. Okay, so there are some things happening over there. And then there is clearly the fear of the next crisis, right? So that's a little bit the place where the hotels are today. Then in terms of product, very quickly, there is this further digitalization, and that we could do a whole conference on the impact of the operational impact on hotel digitalization in practice. Lifestyle, despite the fact that everything is looking the same, it's becoming the new norm. There's all these soft brands appearing, all these collections that are basically being created, also by the big brands. Sustainability is becoming very, very important because it's important for you, so it has to be important for the hotels as well. The new verticals, groups are going. Marriott has announced their entrance into co-working, other types of accommodation, so there's new verticals that are becoming important, and it's very much related to the loyalty programs, because if your loyalty program can become relevant for things, not just the hotel, but maybe things that you touch on a daily basis, then it's becoming much more relevant for you to be part of it. And then, of course, everybody who is not older than 38 years old in this room, you are very relevant for our business and influencing the way how products are being built. And then the new entrants and practices. We're moving away from the traditional distribution channels. There's a shift from revenue management to profitability management. And we see all these tools now being put in place. So there's tools related to this that are put in place, like the one that I showed you from Julio Analytics. And then at the same time, to be able to deal with the other side, there is all these rate audit tools that are being created and being put in place, because it's so relevant to make sure that you get the right rates in the way you have negotiated them. And last but not least, the power of data is hugely relevant, as you understand, as well from the hotel side. And OYO, I mentioned, keep an eye on it, keep looking for it, because it's going to be very influential in our business. So, having seen all of that, what do you do with all of this? How relevant is this for you? What does that mean for you? Should I not work with chains, right? Or should I work just with the independent hotels? Would that work? What about cost versus value and transparency and trust? The answer is all yes. The answer is yes all over the place, right? You should work with chains and independent hotels. It's a great combination of portfolio. It's very useful to make sure that you're not just depending on the chains, and we will make sure that we do a very good selection for the best independent hotels who are as good and sometimes able to be a little bit more competitive than some of the chain hotels, as you now understand. Cost and value, very important in that context. And last but not least, the transparency and trust. We have to go away from the situation where we, from the travel side, sorry hoteliers, I'm now part of the travel side, but I will never really abandon the hotel side. But there needs to be this understanding and transparency. I think it's very important. Just imagine if we would have this environment where we would have this full feeling on transparency and trust between corporations, travel buyers, and hotels. So what is important for the corporates? We know you want to have reduced complexity, you want to have savings and quality guarantee, you want to have the transparency and your high traveler satisfaction. Great, okay, what do hotels want? They want to have access, they want to have reach, they want to have access to you as valuable corporate clients. They need to be able to manage their revenue and their data properly in relation to their cost of sales. But they also want to make sure that when they spend their time trying to participate in an RFP program or something, that they know that it's relevant for them. Okay? So we must create an environment where there's a perfect matchmaking. Okay? So all of that combined, the beauty is, and this is, you will never see that in a marketing presentation of HRS, but I call it the golden triangle, because I think this is this perfect match. I think it is possible. If we just start being a little bit more transparent with each other, be very centric on what needs to be achieved, you as travel buyers have a bit better of an understanding on the hotels, right? And hotels have a bit of better understanding of what you need to achieve. I think we can really create, the golden triangle that is creating this combined added value for everybody. And there is really enough for all of us to be created in terms of value. I have 20 seconds left, and I want to ask you, what's the last time where you've been jumping on your bed from happiness because you were seeing this beautiful golden triangle, right? That might happen tonight, you know, when after this fantastic conference, you go back to your home or to your hotel room, you think, these guys over there, they put something very nice together. I learned something, and I understand a little bit better of data and everything related to it, but mostly also about the hotel industry. On that note, thank you very much, and have a great lunch.